Todd Nash, president of the Oregon Cattlemen's Association. Been a little while since we had an update, and we're going to try to make these a little more consistent. And might not be me every Friday, but we might have some guests, we might have some interviews, but we're going to try to do this on a regular basis. So first, I want to update you with our mid-year meeting we just had last week in John Day. We had a great time down there and a fairly robust turnout, had over 100 people there. I want to give out a big thanks to the Grant County Fairgrounds people that helped us out. Tammy, Denny, and Macy that assisted her there. You guys just knocked it out of the park with putting together a really well organized event there. We ate like kings. The Snaffle Bit restaurant people there from John Day, they came and catered for us, and it was a wonderful time. And if you haven't been to one of those events, it's well worthwhile. I want to cover some of the things that we talked about once we were there. It just wasn't eating and socializing the whole time, though there's a lot of that happens, and that networking is invaluable. When we got into the animal health committee meeting, we had the state vet there, and we talked about a few different things. So there is a tick came up from Central California, and has advanced its way into Northern California and now into Southern Oregon, and it causes abortions. It's called foothill abortions, and it can have a devastating impact. Some of those ranchers down there consider that they'll lose a whole generation of, production. Once they go through that cycle, those cattle go through that cycle, they have an immune response, and there is a vaccine now. It's fairly expensive, but we wanted some recording on that through the state vet, no different than we have recording on trick. And trick is another one that threatens us from time to time. If a tick ever got into your area, it is likely going to be there forever. It'd be something that you have to deal with forever. So we're taking a kind of a look at how this tick is advancing north, and what we might do to mitigate that. But we need reporting on it. We need further education on it. It's thought that it might not be able to live on the west side of the state, where they get a little higher volume of rain. We don't know that it'll live in the northern part of the state, but we do know that it's in the southern part, and some of those guys that are dealing with it's a pretty tough deal. So the other thing that we talked about was brucellosis shots. So I think back to when I was fairly young, and I asked one of the ranchers here, I said, are we still having brucellosis problems in Oregon? And he said, well, no. He said, maybe if we just do this for a few more years, though, Todd, that we'll get past it, and we won't have to give this shot anymore. Well, fast forward 50 years, and we're still giving the shot. It's expensive. It has to be administered by a veterinarian. And a lot of people don't know that you're mandated to give your replacement heifers from somewhere between the age of, I think it's 3 months and 1 year, you're mandated to give them a brucellosis shot unless they're destined for a feedlot that is certified, and that's going to be her final destination there. So anyway, it's one of those expenses that we've incurred and we've just done over time. And so within that committee, we decided that we wanted to take a strong look at that, see if that was something that made sense to do today, to maybe change the law that would normalize trade within the state of Oregon, and then look at our neighboring partners to see if we could have some sort of fair exchange. Right now, brucellosis is centered around that area of greater Yellowstone and in bison and elk there. And if we can keep it there and not advance it out any further and monitor that way, it might be one less expense that we have to incur as producers. In the marketing committee, we had a really great marketing committee meeting. Our marketing chair put together there, Clint Sexton, put together a panel of Will Homer from Painted Hills Natural Beef and Wade Small from AgriBeef. And they did an outstanding job of describing kind of what's going on in the Northwest, what's going on the meat end of things, what's going on some of the feeding end of things, the build out of some of the packing facilities that are going to be coming up. And True West is a new packing facility that's going to be put in Jerome, Idaho, and AgriBeef is going to be the main owner of that. It was interesting listening to Wade Small, especially talk about going back to 2014 when we saw prices escalate, and packers were having to go out and compete for live cattle, and they have since determined that they're never going to be in that position again. So you see sometimes these guys going out and being very aggressive in these video auctions and running the price up, and you look at the futures on live cattle and you wonder how they can do that. Well, they would rather take a chance of losing money on that end of things rather than getting into that final product and having to compete on that open market for those live cattle. And it ran the price of those live cattle way up, and everything else followed. And it was also interesting listening to Will. You know, as great a time as it was for cow-calf producers, it was a pretty challenging time on the meat side of things, trying to sell beef products. And so, you know, this is all kind of a balancing act, and we're all part of a larger supply chain. And yeah, but a very interesting discussion. There was a lot of great questions from the audience, and we appreciate the transparency and open discussion, and really relevant. In the Ledge Committee, we had a bipartisan panel there. Senator Lynn Finley, who's one of our champions here in Eastern Oregon, that it always has our back on every issue. Vicki Breeze Iverson, also a representative from Central Oregon, a cattle producer, fifth generation, I believe. And Rep Helm, who sits on the water committee and chairs that, and Rep Helm, Democrat there from the Portland area, but you know, he's always been willing to listen, and he doesn't see himself as partisan. But a great panel discussion, and we appreciate those guys coming out and making time for us and answering some questions. Our legislative expert Rocky Dollum, he facilitated and that panel there, and he asked those pointed questions that really drill down to where the issues that we need to know about were thoroughly answered there. Few things came up. Josh Hanning from FSA was there, and Josh, he was the state director for FSA and an intern director for about a year during one of the most challenging times that we've seen in our lifetimes, if not the most challenging time, as far as drought in Oregon last year, and talked about some of the programs that are out there. It's also, there's some money left over. I think somewhere around $18 million of money through the state that is left over that can be applied for. And so if you had a downturn in your gross product receipts in 2021, I'd encourage you to go to your lending facility and talk to your banker. There's a few lenders out there, Bank of Eastern Oregon, All West, that can help you through that process. They need your 2017 through 21 IRS forms, and so that they can look at what you have going there, and if you were impacted by that, don't you want to make sure that that's available to you, one, and that it was put there for you if you had that impact to help you get through and stay in business for another year. Lastly, wrap up here, the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. And so that had a Senate hearing this last week at the federal level, and that moved out of there. There were 2 or 3 amendments added onto that, and so that goes on to the full Senate. I don't know when there's going to be a vote on that. Oregon cattlemen supported that, and at a time, and our Senator Wyden co-sponsored. Since then, there's been some trepidation in our organization, and it was never 100% across the board supported. And so Oregon Cattlemen's its new leadership took a vote and decided to stay neutral on this and to monitor this legislation, and that's kind of what we're doing, is watching it. And I'd encourage you, if you have an opinion one way or another, talk to your senators, talk to your representatives, and let them know where you land on it. And it's going to impact everybody a little bit differently, and but that's where we are on that, and that is moving forward. So I don't have, well, I could talk quite a little bit about wolves and what's going on, but I'll save that for another day, and wrap it up there, and everybody have a good weekend. And now that summer's finally here, and most of Oregon has substantial amount of forage, and cattle are looking good. Appreciate you all, and we'll be visiting with you again soon.